I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be joined by the wonderful Jenny Slate to talk all about her stand-up comedy special, Seasoned Professional. And starting off, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the things that you've said in terms of the obstacles in creating an hour-long special is that journey of making sure that it always feels authentically you throughout the material. And I was really interested in the process of writing this and really working on the material, how you made sure to create those touch points for yourself and always connect back to make sure it had that feeling for you.
Well, one of the things that I think is a big sort of like ingredient in that realness of the moment or authenticity is that like I don't write it at all. And everything comes from memory. I've never like written down a bit. I've never written anything down at all. I depend heavily on a structure and a sense of progression um and a plan for progression. I have bullet points that I use when I'm on stage, and it'll just say like orchestra trip or whatever. And I think why that's important for me is that with every audience, there is a unique set of feelings that come up in me as the performer, and some of them are like very expected and they return over and over again, and they're like really persistent or perpetual, just like a feeling of I hope we connect. I hope that they're pleased. I hope that I'm pleased. But with each audience, there's like a special projection maybe that I put on them, or something that I feel in myself where it's like, yeah, we're talking about the orchestra trip, but maybe this time when I tell it, I'm going to feel that I want to describe how bad I was at the violin more than I want to describe how much my stomach hurt. Like there's like different things that I'll lean into. And so it's really important for me as a storyteller to feel that I'm giving what I think the audience will understand the most, just like judging from how they react to me on that night. Yeah, it's really important to me in terms of like where I'm at in my life that I'm telling a story that I somehow, for some reason, need to tell. And that also, if I feel that I really, really want to tell my birth story, but the fact is that I am me from always, and that I don't know why, but like I do want to tell my birth story, but I want to interrupt myself by talking about this orchestra trip to Montreal or this strange audition I got sent on. I'm like really dedicated to those instincts. So that is something that like I'll bring back over and over again. And mostly like for this special, I don't think I performed this material in the way that it was exactly how it was any other time. But I worked through the progression probably a total of like 5 or 6 times before I recorded it and filmed it. And that's because I don't really feel like for me, that there's like a long shelf life for what I want to be talking about on stage. Part of being in the moment is saying something 6 times and then being like, I think I said it.
I love that detail, and especially kind of like the way that it formulates for you as well, because looking back at when you first went on stage and did a 30-second set with one of your friends and came
Yeah.
more from like an improv and stand-up background, not necessarily having grown up with this adoration, always watching stand-up comedy. I was interested if you kind of feel like it's always just been about figuring out the way to structure things creatively in the way that makes the most sense for you versus studying a medium and how other people are doing it based on what you were describing there.
I think that's exactly right. And it's not, I don't mean to dishonor, like the greats and like the legends and people, people that are like really deserve sort of like um chronic recognition. Like there's a reason why we're like Lucille Ball for now and forever, like the greats are the greats, and they're really important. I mean, like Carol Burnett is like a very, very, very important performer to me, and Madeline Kahn and Gilda Radner, um, but also like Wanda Sykes, like they're just like our people. Of course, they're the greats. But for me, stand up is tied to everything else about how I live. And because I am a person who has this like combination of being gregarious but also shy, which is just like, what is that combination? It doesn't even make sense, but it's how I feel. And I will be gregarious if I feel encouraged, and I'll be shy if I feel like hyperstimulated or frightened. And so stand up for me is like a way of working through those feelings. And I do place myself in this heightened atmosphere, but I'm not trying to perfect an art form. I'm trying to nourish myself while I live. And this is an art form that does that for me. And like, I've really somehow always needed to prove to myself that I will be accepted into a community of humans, and that when I arrive with what I have, it will be enough. And there's a version of my life where I grow out of that instinct, and so I move on to other art forms, and that's okay if that happens. But I seem to be at this like really fun intersection of having done the art form enough that I've developed into the professional version of what I am at it, like my like 10,000 hours, or the Malcolm Gladwell thing, that I've done that now. So I'm a professional at this thing that is somewhere between a celebration and a coping mechanism. And I'm glad for it. But yeah, I don't really care about like whatever systems are in place or however people say you're supposed to do stand up. I care about it more as like a social thing, meaning like you can't be just like dominant. You can't not care about people. You can't be selfish. You can't be greedy. You should have something to offer. It's about generosity, and it's about like um helping people satisfy their appetite for pleasure.
It's great because even in the way that you're describing kind of like the emotional facets behind how it all comes together really connects into the way that the material is always finding what is that relatable emotion for the audience. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a detail. For us as an audience, we don't know what it's like to be asked to audition for Pennywise in It, but we
Yeah.
understand the emotional feeling of being perceived in that way in the world. And so I was curious in how you're kind of like always connecting it to specific emotions for the audience.
Yeah, I think um I tend to believe that art that's really specific and is trying to magnify that specificity and show the specificity, like the reason why, even though it's so tailored to like the experience of that one person, the reason why it tends to actually be expansive and like spread out into other people's hearts and minds is because of how specific it feels to be a person. So like there's a version of telling a story about, getting an audition to play Pennywise, and that actually is like totally unrelatable. But I think the common ground there, first of all, is like this is as weird to me as it is to you. Um, but there's also the kind of like I think fun thing of like let's see behind the curtain of what it's like to be an actor, but that usually that experience is glamorous, and for me it's just like hyper specific, and in this case like very embarrassing. And everybody's been embarrassed. I mean, most people have, like good for you if you haven't, but also I suggest it. It's humbling. It helps you figure out what you want and what you want to happen. But um, yeah, I think it's all about like keeping a balance on really what is not relatable, and therefore will isolate you from other people, let alone like maybe make you look like a douche. But like but what is the most specific thing about myself or yourself, or the performer's self, that the performer could bring
Mhm.
um that would connect them to a group of strangers? Like I'm just so interested in that. It's like so affirming. um it's the opposite of like trying to be normal so that people will like you, whatever you think normal might
And even within that segment, I was also just thinking about the moment where you kind of chastise the audience in a really fun way for not being as shocked as they should be by that at the beginning. And there's a lot of different ways in which you kind of play with the idea of pressure and tension and kind of intentionally building it and releasing it. Like when you're talking about the school trip as a kid, we know it's not going to end well, but we don't know how yet. Or asking the audience flat out, have you ever seen the center of like all your pain?
Yeah.
Um, and so I also wanted to ask about the way in which you kind of very intentionally have this playfulness with the audience and the idea of tension being able to really, expand upon a lot of the comedic lands.
Yeah, I think the audience trusts me to like hopefully to not hurt their feelings um or be sort of like generally offensive. But um I think asking the audience in a way to sort of role play with me, like role play as people who misunderstand me when of course like I'm so lucky that in the case of my special, like they're right along they're right alongside me as I go along, but to sort of position them as like, oh, you guys don't get it, when like by saying that I'm saying like I know you get it, but we're also calling out how fucking weird this is and the fact that there are a lot of people who don't get it and how isolating that is and how like visceral that feeling is of um saying something or revealing something that's really personal to you and having people not understand. Or the other thing, which is like, that joke, which is like, have you ever later on in the special, I think I say something like, have you ever seen the exact center of your pain? Or like, do you know that moment right before you're about to pass away? And like, if I were to say that at a dinner party where I didn't know anyone and just say it totally seriously, everyone would be like, that's a fucking crazy thing to say that she just said that. And like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like someone being like, when you're staring at someone's face and you just want to like bite their eyeball. It's just like, no, we don't know that. We don't know that. That's you. That's you and your crazy like internal perspective. And it kind of actually feels like a crime, like you shouldn't do that. Those moments where I take people in, but I don't keep them forever. I just I just really, really enjoy it. But I think I only do it because I can feel that the audience trusts me to not make them do something that's going to be really uncomfortable. I don't know if
I
that answers the question. I can feel my ADHD like firing so hard right now.
No, I love the detail of that answer, and I think the audience trust is such a crucial part in the way that you can kind of hold them in your hands in that way. And it kind of also has me thinking about the fact that it is kind of intentionally non-linear storytelling and it kind of has that essence of like stream of consciousness because it's so relatable in the way that anyone tells a story. If we were having just a regular conversation, we would start here and end here, but we do all these like loops and turns in the middle to get there. Was that kind of a consciousness? Because it's also that thing where it's just like for the audience, it's like that's how all of our brains think. And you also say so many things out loud that are the things that we're all thinking, but we're not saying to each other.
I think um I'm performing as freely as I can, and that's how my thoughts map out, and that's how I am as a storyteller. And while again, like I am like a professional at it, so it's not just like total chaos and like free form weirdness, but that I've done performance enough to know that when I try to make it totally streamlined and not have any tangents, that I'm actually kind of like killing the center of like what makes me as a performer viable and special and also what like I enjoy. And those are also the things that like got me in trouble in school and like got me, like a B- on an essay because it's like great thoughts, Jenny, but like, you need to like we're like this you need to stick to, the structure of an essay. And like you can't just like be a postmodernist writer. Like you have to, follow that or whatever. And like for me, I'm just patterning it out how I how it comes out. Like I'm just doing it the way that it arrives and is expressed from my internal environment. But I think the difference is that at this point, I'm like, this is what my art looks like. I'm not supposed to change myself anymore. I'm supposed to support myself, accept myself, And this is the most practiced and self-understood way that I can be. And also a lot of that is like is me saying to myself and to my child self, like, you're not dumb. The way you think isn't wrong. There's actually a place for this.
And also in terms of just the flow of the night, and going back to what you were talking about before, that essentially you're delivering this material a handful of times, and every single time it's going to be different because you have that kind of riding a tandem bicycle relationship with the audience that I've heard you describe that I love. But there's just little things as well. Like I love the fact that you kind of knock the mic stand over unintentionally to kind of
Oh
create this
God. Yeah.
playful disobedience, but you couldn't have known that it was going to roll off the stage. And
Right.
even just then, that's usually something that you're able to like physically lean on and kind of like hold on to as part of your stage dynamic. But now you don't have that. So how does the second half of the show feel different? And knowing the second taping, I have to make sure that I also don't have the mic stand.
Oh,
And so what were some of those kind of touch points in filming it that were just very different to how you'd mapped it out in your head?
yeah. I mean, I do love to knock over the mic stand. I don't like plan to do it, but sometimes I'll do it. It's kind of like a fun thing that like, if there's a chance, maybe I'll do it. Um, and I did it, and I'm never standing on a stage that's a circle. I didn't think about that, and the mic stand rolled off. The mic stand is also, it's like my security, like I always lean on it. I'm not a performer that moves around the stage a lot. I like to be physical, but I'm sort of like a little donkey on just like on a rope, and I like to go in a small circle. I like small spaces. And that's not it's not a challenge I would have put there for myself. I really like that mic stand. And when I travel and I tour, I ask for them to like, please give me a mic stand with a cord, and like a mic with a cord and a stand. I don't want like a wireless mic. I genuinely feel like my brain works so quickly and I'm so filled with energy that if I have a wireless mic, I might actually just float up and onto the ceiling, which weirdly is a line from my Marcel the Shell, which like comes directly from how I feel when I have too much energy. I'm like, I might float out, like I'm too happy, I'm too excited. But I also feel that um it's really, really cool to have that real moment, and then to have to be enough of um a performer who knows how everything works to be like, this, we filmed two shows. If we want to cut between them, the first won't match with the second. So now I have to deal with it. And it's that perfect combination of being like wild, but also being developed. And that this is like exactly why I have done this art form for so long, just to like guard and express and allow for my wildness while also having um to deal with the fact that like I've done this for long enough that I know how it works, and I don't want to feel limited by that. And I want to say at this point I'm strong enough not just to like bounce back from little mistakes that I made, but like to live within the environment that the mistake created, not ignore it and have to deal. And again, it's one of those things that it's like that helps me as a person in life. I feel the worst in life when I feel like I have to have like right angles everywhere, and as they say, color within the lines. I really, really need to believe that the ways in which I'm flawed, and in which like my energy led me to do a fun thing, but then it created an issue, that I don't have to like stop living right then, or stop the performance, or explain myself, but that I'm allowed to press on within the shape that I created. It's just like, it's scary, but I think at this point I've conditioned myself to react and accept. And I just like, I really, really like that. And that's why also like my performance style is really precious to me.
Yeah. Because it adds this really great touch point for the audience that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And I loved it.
A lot of
Um,
people ask if I did that on purpose. And I'm like,
the choreography would be so impressive.
yeah, like, first of all, no. But yeah, like, I'm not that skilled. But secondly, like, I don't want to make things harder, but that's how life often is. Like, especially if you're like free and you're being a free weirdo, it does sometimes get really hard. But yeah, it's also like what it is.
I also have to ask about the conversations that you had with Pamela, your therapist, who features in the show really strongly, because again, those segments go back to that. How is it relatable to the audience? Because whether you've been to therapy or not, everybody's had that experience of, what is it like to see a teacher outside of school for the first time and realize they're a real person?
Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned it to her kind of early on. And then as the filming got much closer, kind of had more in-depth conversations about this is actually what I'm thinking about talking about. And so I was just curious what that discussion looked like in kind of making sure that that still worked within your therapist relationship with each other.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't like, I was able to tell her I had to, I don't want to be like reckless, um, and or embarrassing. Like I remember a time when um I was like on vacation with my dad and one of and my parents, and they had brought along or we were vacationing with, I guess, a couple that my parents had become friends with. And we were all at the dinner table and I was like making fun of my dad in a good-natured way. It with a joke, like a sort of impression of him that I'd done before, but not in front of those people. And everyone was laughing, and my grandparents were there too. And maybe it's that my grandfather also was kind of like old fashioned, and the man in the couple was a work friend of my dad. So maybe my grandfather felt like, oh, you can't like, embarrass a man and with people he works with. But that I specifically remember my grandfather kind of being like, that wasn't, you took it too far. You embarrassed your father. And I was like, oh, I thought I was making him proud. I thought he was laughing. I thought he liked it. I thought they all liked it. And that is like a really formative memory for me where I'm like, I don't want to embarrass people that I like need and care about. So anyway, with Pamela, like on the day before we filmed, I told her like I want to do this thing. And it's sort of this hyperbole of a fantasy about sort of explaining the fact that like there's been some transference, I understand, and that like, you're not my mom, and that sometimes that's been kind of like I love my own mom, but that I realize I depend on you for that, and how it felt for me when I realized you had your own children. But I didn't say more than that because the fact is I wanted to be able to do the joke. And I felt like if I told her what it was about and she had any reaction, I would lose my nerve. Um, and she gave me permission. She was like, you got to do what you got to do. And I kept saying, like, it won't be bad. It won't be bad. It just might be actually embarrassingly flattering, like how much I care about you. Um, and I felt very awkward about it. And honestly, other than her telling me that she watched the special, which I asked her to do, because then I felt nervous. Like when it came out, I was like, what if this is really fucked up, you know? Like I don't think it is, but I don't know. I really know what her deal is, like in terms of what she's okay with. And she watched it and she told me not only that she thought it was good, which she said like it was really good, which is incredible feedback. But that she knows how hard it is for me sometimes to perform and how bad my stage fright is and how much self-doubt I have. But other than that, we haven't really talked about it. It's
I
the
mean,
most like real thing I've played with.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up your relationship with stage fright there as well, which, was the name of your previous special and was something that, you've talked about before, how like when you were performing in like high school speech tournaments, like you would throw up so much that they wouldn't even let you on the bus and your mom would have to drive you instead. And
You're so well researched. I like honestly sometimes like I go into interviews and I'm like, someone will ask me something again, and I'm gonna have to try to find a current answer for it. I can't believe like wow. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but you really have
no,
done
thank you.
research. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
But I love the journey of looking at going from there to a relationship of having a stand-up special and really owning your experience within the title by calling it seasoned professional, because that's not just even a personal thing that you're doing. You're also telling the audience and people in the industry, like, I have the experience and I know that I have those 10,000 hours and I know that I have, the confidence and to go out there and do this in a way where it's going to be really, really great. And I was just curious what that emotional experience was for you in filming a special with a title like this and being able to own that in such a public way, because I think it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. And it was a really, really important, it was a very significant experience for me because I think I might have still been holding on to a tiny shred of the really unhelpful norm or standard or whatever, like opinion that like a professional and a professional stand-up comedian looks a certain way, feels a certain way. And that like I had done this job enough that I realized like the professional version of me is still me. It's just me in like total acceptance of what I'm like, and me having as much access to my perceptions and my expressions as I'm able to have. Me without like, oh no, don't do that, those sort of like bad criticisms of like the inner critic that is limiting. And it was really, really exciting to be like, oh shit, I really am a seasoned professional. And it's not that I'm a seasoned professional with traces of me. Me being a seasoned professional means like being full blown me, but without the sort of like amateur dependence on chaos and energy. Like hopefully this chaos and energy and adrenaline will just see me through. But me being like, there's no version of me that doesn't feel so scared before I do this, full of doubt, pretty much sure that this is going to fall apart, but also driven to throw myself up there. That's what it's like. It's not going to change. It's not a premonition. It's just what it is. And then there's the onstage thing that happens. And I've done it just enough times to be sort of in the final phase of needing to express this. And I know my process enough that I know I'm there now. And this belongs to me. And I could it's emotional to me because I've spent so much time being like, you're not the one, like you're just not, you're on the outside because you're not admitted to the inside, because, and not like a self-congratulatory, like, ooh, I'm a weirdo, I'm so weird. I don't think that, but just like, it's a more sort of heartbreaking thing of like, there's not a place for you. And instead, this is me arriving, being like, this is it. This is the place. I made it for myself, and it was also given to me, luckily, by the people who allowed me to perform this by funding my work. And it just was one of the most beautiful experiences of um my journey so far as a performer. I just love it. I really love it. Like I love the work, and I like how I look. I look like myself, and I telling stories from my life, and I just like I recognize everything.
I love the special so much, and I think even more so the personal journey that you described there is just so remarkable. So congratulations and thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you. I just loved this. It's actually like been quite a while since I've spoken about the work and that I did here, and I really appreciate being able to touch back into it because time passes, and like I'm a mom of a 3.5-year-old, and that takes up a lot of my life, and sometimes I forget that I did this. So, thanks.